How are you doing? Late night?
Yeah, a little late. It's not too bad. To,
That was worth staying up for, though. Yeah.
Good evening. You're back with the Insiders. We have another special guest lined up for this week. This time it was a treat given by me to you guys and to Dazza.
Thanks, Matt.
It's all good. It's all good. This week we're bringing you the genius mind, the founder, the designer, and the kind of craftsman behind Album Surfboards. Some of the world's greatest surfboards under the feet of some of the world's greatest surfers now. And I actually recorded this minutes after Kelly had just won the pipe event. So it's been a couple of weeks held back because we've had some other episodes drop. And it was so sick to chat with Matt Parker of Album. We just flowed through chatting about Kelly, chatting about boards, chatting about what boards he would put on everyday surfers and average surfers like us, and some super cool insights into his team, into his shaping team, into how they work, but also into his team of riders. I found it extremely intriguing. And let's dive straight into my chat. That was missing Darren, unfortunately, because he has responsibilities like children. And this is the Insiders with Matt Parker. Welcome, Mr. Matt Parker of Album Surfboards, to the Insider podcast.
Thanks. Good to join you. Thanks for having me.
Late on a Saturday evening in the UK, we both just witnessed the GOAT take out the pipeline event, which was pretty special and also helped keep me awake.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a little bit. It's hard to turn away, hard to be tired when you can watch that happen in real time.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, to be honest, I didn't even notice the time. I actually completely messed up the timings with you, didn't I? But we'll blame Kelly for that. What I was actually really interested about is how when you messaged saying you're going to be shaping until 11 o'clock tonight, your time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I shape at night for the most part. I mean, it's the afternoon here in California, but I tend to get a lot of the desk work done or surf work done during the day, and then I'll shape in the evenings a lot because it's quiet and nobody's around. And on the weekends here too, like we moved into a new showroom about a little over a year ago, and one of the reasons we moved into this showroom was because there was a shaping bay in the back, and so it's easier for me to pop in back there. For the last probably 15-16 years, our main factory is down in Oceanside, which is about a 20-minute drive from here. And so I would used to go and like set aside blocks of time to go drive down and just like knock out shapes, and I'd be down there till late. But now that I shape mostly out of the back of the showroom, I have a little bit more flexibility, but I still like the time when no one's around. It's quiet.
Yeah, you can. I would say you'd be less distracted, and probably is the way, except for the days when it's the pipe final.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Do you still use the Oceanside facility, or is that gone?
No, that's still where we glass probably 85-90% of our boards still glass down there, and I still have a shaping bay down there, so I'm still down there all the time. In fact, once I'm done shaping in San Clemente today, later this evening, I'll probably be driving shapes down there, the finished ones, to get them in queue to get glassed, so, and pick up ones that are finished and all that. So it's always a little bit of back and forth.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's quite a few like places like that in Europe as well. I went and saw the boys at Pukas, and they've got a really interesting setup because a few years ago they had a fire. And now they've got their offices and where they have their blanks shaped, and then it's like a half an hour drive to the other factory, and then they drive them back. And so when I'm speaking to those guys and asking, like how's a board coming along, or usually chasing one for myself or something, it has to be chased between two facilities, and it has its challenges, but I guess it has to be done as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just the way it goes. I think the crew that I've worked with down at Oceanside, they're great. Most of those guys I've been working with forever. But I don't live down there, so it's like if I can get it closer to where I am on a day-to-day basis, I can just be more efficient with my time. So
yeah, is it how close are you now? Is that where
it's like a 20. Well, to San Clemente, the showroom, I live like right just a few minutes a couple miles up the road, so it's easy. It's easy to pop in and out.
Yeah, Yeah. Well, that's much better, isn't it? Yeah, you don't want to
Hmm.
be traveling too far. Which is cool. Which leads me to, does that mean that you get to surf more now that you don't have to commute?
I always surf enough. That's always a priority, right? Because
Yeah.
that's very critical. I mean, that's one of the reasons we're based here where we are, is because I can see the ocean from the front of the showroom. So we're like across
Oh,
the street
amazing.
from the coast. And then where I surf is just a quick little 10-minute bike ride down the way. So
Yeah.
it's easy to pop in and out. And if the waves are good, get out and go surfing. So I surf most every day if there's something rideable out there.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, that's as critical as anything else I do as far as R&D and testing ideas. And I know there's some shapers that don't really surf that much, and I don't know how you can do that. I mean, to me, that's the whole point.
Yeah. Yeah.
The whole point I make surfboards for a living is so I can surf. So,
I wish
you know.
this is part of the reason why I wish Darren was here, because he lives in, so I'm South Coast UK, as you know. Darren lives in Hossegor in France, and
Mm-hmm.
he runs a surf camp there and stuff. And when I was chatting to him just off of the podcast, and he was explaining to me an average day, and he has a 2 hour time slot. No matter where it is in the day, he has 2 hours where it's for his surf. And
Mm-hmm.
he was telling me how busy he is because of like work and stuff. And I said, oh, you could also always like reduce your surf time, or like by an hour, or maybe have a day off. And it was almost like I'd suggested he goes and like kills a dog or something, because but you are 100% right. It's, yeah, you've got to maximize your surf time as and when you can get it, can't you? And it's quite interesting your point, which you say about some shapers don't surf that much. I've also
Mm-hmm.
noticed, with speaking to quite a lot of shapers, that it always seems that they never have surfboards. Are you that type, or do you have are you more of an organized shaper that has a quiver?
I always have a handful of boards that, like, if I needed to leave on a trip tomorrow, I would have
Yeah.
boards to take. But
Yeah.
I don't have like a traditional quiver in the sense that I'm like building and stockpiling. I don't have like 30 boards in my garage that are like my historic boards that I've used, and it's always ever changing.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like week to week, month to month, the boards that are in there and the boards that I'm surfing are always kind of, I probably only have 2 or 3 boards that are more than a year old.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And the rest are kind of like, I'm trying something new, or exploring a new design. And
Yeah.
I mean, even surfing every day, that's still limited, right?
Yeah.
Like you're still only have so much time to actually get out there. And so,
That's
yeah, but that's the fun of it for me though, too, because I tend to surf the same spots most people do. And so I'm very familiar with those waves. I've been surfing them for 30 years or something like that. And so you're used to kind of what the wave does on every swell and what to expect. And so the fun and the excitement for me is taking out something new and something different and seeing like, oh, how's this going to go? And I have kind of the control for me more is the wave. And that's the kind of like the measuring stick for what the different boards and different ideas feel like in that similar wave. So
that's actually really super interesting, because I was having a conversation only yesterday where a friend of mine lives in Cornwall, so they get a much more regular swell. And I was saying to them, because he was asking about what boards I've been riding, and I've been riding your Townsend that you made me.
Oh yeah.
Thanks so much for. And he said to me, have you tried it in this type of wave and this type of wave? And I was like, I honestly haven't, because my surf time where our local break is so limited, and it's actually been such a bad winter for waves on the south coast that I've actually only surfed it in a right. I've not gone left on it yet, and it's been quite like rolly. But that's one of the things I was discussing with him, is when you're in a wave, or when you do get to surf every day, or even just a run a swell, it's so nice to be able to experiment with your boards. And even just the same board changing up your fins is a really nice feeling. But the reason I asked is because, as I say, like young Theo, who's out there with yourself, he shaped me a board in the summer, and I said to him, oh sweet, yeah, we'll go for a surf. And he was like, oh yeah, I haven't got a board. And I I was like,
Well, when he came out here, that was like the first thing he did. He was like, "I need to get a board." He's like, because he didn't come out with the board, so we're like, "All right, let's get you a Twinsman." And then a couple weeks later, he's like, "Yeah, can I want to do a plasmic too?" And so he's gotten a couple boards for himself once he's out here.
I think he's got more boards now than he's had. But it was the same as Christian Bradley. I'm not sure if you know Christian, but he I went down to see those guys in October, and they had like an inter factory kind of event. And his board, he had 3 odd fins on it, and this old 6.9 that he shaped for someone that went a little bit wrong. And I was like, "You're one of the best shapers in the world, and you barely scratching a board together." So it always intrigued me that, like, I won't list them all off, but there's so many shapers that I've spoken to that when I've gone, just chat to them about, are you going surfing and stuff, and they're like, "Oh no, I haven't got a board," and stuff. I'm like, "Well,
that's hilarious." No, I always have a board, and like that's one other key thing about for us, like having our showroom kind of based right here, is that sometimes a lot of the boards I make for the showroom are just different ideas. Like I'm gonna so every week I always kind of set aside like a batch of boards that are either for the shop or for new conceptual thinking. And so I'll always set aside a few of those. And some of those are geared like, oh yeah, I could surf this if, I might do it in my dimensions just in case I get to take it out and it gets finished in a time when there's waves that suit it. I'll take it out and paddle it out. But that's always kind of a priority too. It's like take care of the customers' boards, the customs that come in, but always set aside time.
Yeah.
Like today I'm shaping this afternoon, I have 4 new kind of like stretched out 20 designs for Asher Pacey that are kind of in the last edit we did in the art form edit, he's riding like a 6'4" in the closing scene, which is very unusual for him because most people are familiar with seeing him on a 5'2" or 5'3" or 5'0" or something like that, right? And so that's been really fun for him to explore, like, oh, let's see what something a little bit stretched out goes like. And so today I have a few customer boards that I'm doing, but a chunk of the afternoon is just kind of going through a few iterations of this concept, like in 4 different sizes, and kind of a few little tweaks on the rocker and a few little tweaks on different bottoms contours to them. But
who makes that tweak? Is that coming from feedback from him, or is it you just looking at it, or is it a bit of both?
It's a little bit of both. So it's like us wanting to expand for him just what he can ride, right? Because he, in years past, you're kind of like not pigeonholed, you're kind of like stuck in one little window of what people expect you to ride. And of course, that's like his bread and butter and what he loves and what he looks good on. But and he's open-minded too. And so if he's open-minded, let's expand that as much as possible, because how interesting is it to see him ride something unexpected? It's super interesting. And so and for him too, it's new feelings and new experiences after years and years, decades of amazing surfing. It's still pretty cool to have these new experiences come. And so like that Townsend, that board that he's riding in that edit is a Townsend. It's a symmetrical round-tailed 6'4", and he had borrowed. We had made one for his brother in Australia like that, and he had borrowed it and loved it and had just a great time on it. And so we made him his own. So he surfed that, and so now I'm taking that feedback from him surfing that and kind of doing a little different spin on it and a little variation. That's not exactly that model, but it's along the same lines.
Yeah.
So
that's because when I watched Art Form and that funnily enough, the ending, weirdly, I thought the board looked longer than 6'4", but I think that's because I'm, like you say, you're used to seeing Asher with like such short boards. And then I saw him, and I think first off, I thought it was a round-tailed Twinsman, because I've seen you do a couple of those and stuff. And then I think on the Instagram caption or somewhere it said it was a Townsend, and I was like, oh, that's mad. But so that's really cool that you'll be able to. So if you talk about Asher, and obviously Josh Kerr surfing your boards, and obviously Jack Freestone's just jumped on them, which is cool. Was there a point where you're like the demand, because like for everyone listening, you are stupidly busy.
Yeah.
But was there a point where the demand, was it when like Asher started to get like that free surfing movement started to go boom, or like when Josh Kerr started to do all of his crazy edits? or has it just
Mhm.
kind of been a bit more stable?
Yeah, it would be hard for me to pinpoint when there was like a jumping off point that's been like hectic. It's because it feels like it's been that way for a
Hmm.
few years now. Like when we talked at the start of this conversation, talking about how it's shaped till late at night. I've been doing that for 10 or 15 years plus. Where
Yeah.
so it's I think it's been like this steady burn, like this slow burn that's kind of on a bit of an accelerated trajectory. And so probably the last 3 or 4 years. So I think Josh started riding the boards probably 4 years ago. Like
Hmm.
during like his last year on tour, he was kind of experimenting with some stuff I was sending him, which I think was for. It's hard to keep track of time with the last couple of years we've all been through. I don't know what years what,
Exactly the
but
same.
it's probably been 4 or 5 years or something like that. That's been pretty nonstop. I think when we moved into like our first real showroom in California, we'd had our factory, but we kind of just sold the boards, I don't even, people would come to my office or something like that. But that's probably been 7 or 8 years ago. And that's probably I would say the biggest leaping off point for us where it's been nonstop.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's really cool. And on that point, Jack Freestone joining you boys. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great move for him. I love his surfing. He actually years ago now, must be 5 or 6 years ago, again, lose track of time, like you say, in the edit that Kai Neville put out called Cluster, which I'm not sure if
Mm-hmm.
you've seen. I think he goes underground in terms of how he's noticed, and his surfing in that edit, I think, was
Mm-hmm.
sick. And then I saw him go world tour way, which he
Mm-hmm.
100% has the ability to do so, but it
Mm-hmm.
kind of felt like he wasn't getting, I don't know, the right way of surfing it for him. And now I've seen obviously him surfing. There was a clip that he dropped the other day where he's in a barrel, he just gets barreled, and I was like, I thought he goes out on him and then he comes out of it. I'm like, what are you doing? But
Yeah, I think just echoing that, I think obviously he's a world-class surfer, right? But
yeah,
the tour, and we're all fans of the tour. We just watched it. It's totally entertaining and I love watching it. But there definitely is a box that you get put in that
mm,
format. There's certain ways you're expected to surf and turns, and I think with someone like Jack, who's so talented and creative and interesting, you're kind of going to see a limited version of what he can really do. And I think he probably saw a lot of that with Josh, who was a top 10
yeah,
surfer in the world, did great on the tour, was amazing to watch, but probably has done some of his best surfing in his mid to late 30s off tour in the last few years, because he's freed up without any restrictions to ride whatever he wants to ride. And that freedom and that kind of removing the burden of having to like tick the box in a contest, I think just allows you to have more fun and enjoy surfing more. And so you get more out of it. And so Jack he's good friends with some of our crew in Australia that build boards there. And they
mm,
had given him a Twinsman like months ago. And it was after the last season was over, and he was kind of trying to decide if he was going to come back and compete again. And he surfed that Twinsman for probably 2 or 3 months straight back home in Kauai, and before they moved to Oahu, and just fell in love with it. didn't want to
yeah.
surf anything else. And I think he realized like, there's a whole different world out there that I can go do. And so for me, like the idea of someone with that level of talent, world-class, top 10 talent, applying that to more free thinking boards is really exciting, because
Yeah.
you see what the potential is there. It's pretty cool.
I would never, well, not never, I'd never say never, but I have yet to have the access to pose this question to the man himself. But I sit in the same boat as you. Josh Kerr, in my opinion, has done better surfing off tour on
Mm-hmm.
your boards than potentially on tour. And I would love to ask him if he could go back, say 5 years or 6 years, or when he a couple of years before he came off tour, if he could go back but on your board,
Mm-hmm.
would he?
Mm-hmm.
And ask him the answer, because there's no doubt in my mind he surfs them like phenomenally well, and maybe Jack could do the same thing if he gets your board dialed in to the level he wants, and then decides he still misses that competitive edge. I think it
Mm-hmm.
would be so sick to watch someone paddle out in a WSL event on a Twinsman or on a fight.
What's funny is, as fans, like, and people that watch, I think everybody would enjoy more variety and what that would bring to those events, because it'd be more interesting. You'd be like, if everyone was riding varied equipment and everyone had different ideas, it's just kind of like it's more exciting. I think unfortunately the surfers are conservative in general, and the World Tour definitely kind of makes things a little bit more uniform in what you're supposed to do. And so I don't know. I think it would be so fun to see someone out on a twin fin in an event, because in most cases, like, when they're doing when they're surfing average beach break in Australia or something like that, it's such a better option. You go faster, you look freed up. But I don't know. I just don't know if that format would reward that creative or out of the box approach.
No, I don't. I think that the WSL would probably get hung up on it, but I would love to see it. That actually goes to a point about where you say about how they're like almost boxed into it, surfing away. I think Coco Ho breaks it down in the Electric Acid, where it looked like it took her kind of a couple of days into that trip to get used to surfing twin fins, and then so I think that really holds that point as well to what you're saying, is that she kind of had to talk herself out of having to like try and surf that certain way where they want them to surf, rather than surfing that different way. And she I think benefited from it as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt, like, a high performance thruster is an amazing board, right? And they go amazing, they feel amazing in good waves. They are probably the most high performance equipment out there, but there's also a certain way they're meant to be surfed. It's tougher to veer outside of that because of the approach that they just the line that you take with that.
Yeah,
it's just going to be similar, because there's a similar thread that kind of runs through and how you do it. So
talk about it. Did you know that it was Coco Mason when you was doing the Electric Acid this time?
Yeah, when they send us the invite for those, they give you they don't say their name, but they give you the height and weight and kind of breakdown of their age and everything. And so you can pretty quickly surmise who it is. And this one, it's like, it's a guy, and then it's a sister, and then they also originally it was gonna the dad Mike was gonna be in it too, but I think he was either injured or something was up. So originally we made boards for Mason, Coco, and Michael to all go together and do it, but then Michael couldn't do it, and so I knew it was the whole family when they sent the invite. Which is very exciting. I mean, who wouldn't want to make a board for them? It's so like just the most entertaining surfers out there.
Yeah, there's not many brother sister combos with the height and dimensions of those two, and then their dad thrown into the mix as well. I thought it was amazing. It's actually something that it was something that I picked up on, because I'm just inherently a board geek, and like little tweaks on boards, and then your piece on it where you actually physically changed the shape of a board because Coco was going to be surfing it. And I think it obviously hugely benefited the board. I mean, it won. It was her pick to win, which is amazing. And I think that style, maybe that's where the 15 years of late shaping and tweaking and testing your own boards and stuff pays off, because it's a seriously good surfboard.
But those electric acid testings are some of the funnest things to do.
Yeah,
because you kind of really do get free reign, and you're really trying to make something that it's always kind of fun when you make a board when somebody doesn't order it, when you kind of know who they are and how they surf, and you have this idea of, okay, if I could see them on anything and they don't have any say in it, I just got to make what I think that would work for them. And then it's obviously that one, when she picked it, it's really gratifying, because it all worked out, and like I guessed right, and it came together, and she loved it. So very cool.
That'd be a good way of ordering boards for everyone, wouldn't it? If they just came to you and said, "Here, this is how I surf. Make me what I need."
Oh yeah.
That'd be. So with the Electric Acid, so you done Dane, because I know you had was it the Dissim, the Dis?
Yep.
Yeah. And then was you in the Steph one?
I wasn't in the Steph one. I think that was almost all Australia shapers for that one.
Yeah.
because they sourced them out of there.
And then
But we did well, and there was one that was started before the Mason and Coco one came out. So there's one that started with Kelly.
Yeah, it's that they've said it's still coming.
That we made boards for, and that I know they've shot some stuff. I know they shot like on Christmas Day with him riding my board a year ago. I again lost track of time, but I think it was last year when they took it out there. And those ones actually, they took those batch of boards we made for the Kelly electric acid to the Stab High boat trip that they did in Indo.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so Sebastian Williams, who came in second, that ended up riding this little asym quad thing that I made for Kelly and rode it the whole time. And so that was kind of cool. It was like, oh, I didn't even know if it was going to actually happen. And then he's riding the board and like had like his favorite board he's ever ridden, and got second in the thing and surfed amazing. So it's cool.
That explains to me why it was in FCS2, because for ages and ages I'd seen it and I was like, oh, there's an FCS2 album out there kind of thing. And I thought, because I didn't know if it was a board made for Sebastian, because I assumed it was for Sebastian. I didn't know this inside knowledge kind of thing, but now that makes way more sense to why Kelly obviously definitely wouldn't be on a board with Future Sins. So that's super interesting. So with you, so basically you're saying that you had someone invite you to shape a board for Kelly and you decided to put him on an asym.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's kind of, for these kinds of things, it's like, oh yeah, if you're gonna make one for Kelly, and I didn't want to. I actually would have loved to see him on the Disasym, like the same board I made for Dane, because I think he would surf amazing on it. But you can't. I couldn't do the same board again, so I had to do some variation. So I made and I know he has a history with quads, and so I was like, that might be kind of fun to make an asym that's a 4-fin setup and give him because I knew most people would make twins a lot. There's always going to be a lot of twin fins and acid test things. So that's
the part that I'm a big Stab fan. I followed them for a long time, and the electric acid is probably my favorite feature of theirs because of being such a, like, I just love the intricacies within the boards. And I felt like some of the bigger named brands almost, not that they owe me anything, but let me down by putting in models that were a bit safe. And I really like Dane's ones. I love Dane's ones because every board in there is so different. Even his neckbeard too is still different. But then on Steph's, I know she rides the Cali Twin from Lost, which is just like a stock board, and CI got really lazy and gave her a Black Beauty or something, which is just a bit boring. But so I would love, and that's why I like the Noah Dean one, because they got some weird shapers for it, or not weird, but like Schroff and some other people, and that's what intrigues me on those Stab edits is seeing people like your boards and like Ryan Birch's boards and Lovelace and all of those people, where I think the Lost boards and everything, no, not taking anything away from them, they're amazing, but on those electric acids I wish it stayed a bit left of center as well.
Well, to me, it's an excuse to not. I mean, it's easy to just throw one of your models in there, right? Like to just take one of your models that you know is a little bit alternative and just do it in their dimensions and send it in because it's kind of proven. And I could have, like with the Mason and Coco one, I could have very easily thrown a Twinsman in there, and that board probably would have won too because she loves that. I've made her one since that she surfs all the time and loves it.
Yeah,
but I was like, that's safe, and I already know that works. It's like, this is an excuse to try to come up with a new design and see if there's validity to it and if it'll go. So why not take advantage of you not get that many opportunities like that, so why not take advantage of it and do something new and unexpected?
Yeah, and I think that, to me, as a fan of you and a fan of the stabbing, it made it way more kind of gripping for me as well, and I thought that was pretty sick.
It's definitely more of a gamble though, because I didn't make one. You don't have time to make one and go surf it and see if there's something to it. So the first version of that style of narrowed plasmic with different rocker and different fin placement, all that stuff, those were the first ones I ever made. So
that's so mad. So with that, because some of your boards obviously are, like, say for example the plasmic, it's out there, that concave, I call it like a Bonzer-esque kind of channel thing that runs. Where does that come from?
So that model it's funny. That one has an interesting backstory because we were starting our soft top program, and we build like these foamies here in the States. And the way we build them is they're injection molded foam. So we take them from a finished shape and we create the mold out of this finished shape to then blow the foamies out of, and so you can replicate them. And so I had done like a couple prototype boards that were going to be for the soft top. And this is right when Asher was coming on board with us. And so we had some discussions, but nothing was firmed up. And he hadn't even really tried a board before. And he happened to be in California with a couple friends, and they were going to do a snapped 4 trip to Mexico, like pre-COVID. And so he stopped in California, and we went out to dinner, and we were just chatting about boards and future and stuff. And he wanted to take a board down to Mexico to go try. And of course he rides unusual dimensions. And at that time, like, our stock inventory was basically non-existent. And so the only board I had to send him was this like 410 or 411 soft Seagate soft top prototype. It was a PU board. I think it was PU. Yeah, it was PU. But it was like weird dimensions. It was like 410 by 19 and 5/8 by 2 3/4, like super thick, because it had to fit. Because the way we make the soft tops, you have to have internal stringers, and so it's got to be thick enough to fit, to fit the stringers. And so he went down and he surfed the thing amazing. And they sent back a clip, like Minnie, Dane Reynolds filmer was down there with them filming for Snapped. And so while they were down there, he texted me like a clip of Asher just out on like a nice sunny day at this little Point Break, just going to town. And I was like, wow, I guess maybe there's something to this board besides just a soft top. And so from there, we kind of took that idea, and then kind of through iterations, it turned into the Plasmic.
When I asked that question, the last thing I thought you were going to say is when we started making our soft tops.
Yeah.
But that's just it's cool. It's on the episode we recorded recently. We talk about Darren worked closely with Mark Phipps and refining a board, and how Darren's actually had the board from the same board but dimensions from 711 down to 6/7, and with 4 different tail shapes. And he thinks the one he's got now is the best one they've ever made. And it's just really cool how boards just evolve.
Well, I think sometimes, like, when you're given design parameters, like, you have like a problem to solve. Like, so we had a problem to solve for the soft top thing where there had to be certain dimensions, and we're trying to make this little stubby small one had to be thick enough. It kind of forces you to think creatively to solve that problem. And so that kind of juices up what design comes out of that. Where sometimes if everything is just totally free form and there's nothing, can just do whatever you want, it's almost harder to come up with something that is new and innovative. Sometimes the parameters or the rules you have to kind of work through force you to come up with a better solution. So
I think that applies to quite a lot. And I think that's it's almost like the same as that board you made, or when you make a board for like the electric acid or something. And this goes to boards in general, when one of the things you get is like a 5-fin option on a board that's designed to be a quad, or and like on my own boards, that when I order a board, I kind of will ask the shaper, is it meant to be a quad? Is it meant to be a twin? Is it meant to be a thruster? And then just stick with that to keep those options away from myself. And I know that it's cool to change, and it is cool to have the option as well. But I kind of like being put in the box of, it's a twinny, go surf it as a twinny. But then again, I guess you could go kill and upright as well and stuff. But
don't you find though too, like a lot of times when you have a 5-fin board, there's one way you kind of like it more, and you end up just surfing it that way
every time.
It's very rare that you jump back and forth all the time. The only board that's different, I guess, like Josh will jump on an Insanity. He'll go twin trailer or quad back and forth quite often. He never rides it as a thruster, but he will jump from quad to twin trailer depending on the waves.
Yeah, and there's a few boards out there that are really, really good at that. We actually, a UK shaper called Luke Hart, he made this board for a brand that we've got called Form, and it's got this really cool, the plugs are literally next to each other and you surf it as a 2+1, like with the trailer, or as a thruster. And I had one of those, and it feels so different when you surf it as the twinny to a 2+1 and that's what it's made to do. So I really got it. But then there's a couple of boards that I've had where they're like, yes, it's meant to be a quad, and then I put a thruster in it just to try it out, and I'm like, yeah, this is meant to be a quad.
Yep.
And sometimes taking that choice away from people, I think, actually aids in the feedback as well. But another question I had for yourself is something that's quite recently brought up actually on our podcast as well, but a few people have asked about the term of how you would describe your boards, and people using the words progressive craft.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally hate that phrase. But do you?
Well, I think again that kind of puts it in the incorrect box, right?
Yeah.
Like with the Triple Crown, they're trying to get people. They want to, because they know people want to see John ride something different, and it's not necessarily quote unquote progressive for him to ride like a single fin channel bottom. That's not technically a progressive board. It's just a different board.
Yeah.
And so I think like my boards are all performance oriented boards. They're all every board I make is meant to surf and to push your surfing and to be like I want to surf really well with these things. They're not just different for the sake of being different, or they're not just clunky to be funky or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so I agree. I mean, progressive, I know the spirit of what they're intending to do, but it's the wrong terminology because it boxes it in the wrong way.
Yeah, it's a weird one for me as well, because I said I hate the term. I understand the word progressive. I like, because I think, like, for example, when you've got this afternoon, you're going to go and do your four shapes. You're tweaking them to progress on and to be a progressive and potentially change and be better than anything else that's out there. But at the same time, I think the word alternative craft is almost better. But then again, what's it alternative? Like my quiver is just full of twinnies, so it's not as alternative as a thruster. Actually, is a weird board for me, and that's what I thought was interesting with the Vans thing was, like say Tosh Tudor, for him a thruster is a weird board.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Single fin is his like stock, daily board, right?
Yeah.
So.
But I had, like I say, me and Darren discussed it when we were talking about mid lengths and calling them and what people call them, and whether because of how unfashionable the word mini mal is now.
What's funny is that term never took place in the States. No one ever calls them a mini mal, and it was never a category. It's always been a category in Europe or Australia or other places. But it does sound awful.
Yeah, if you there's a few boards out there that if you ban them a mini mal, it's almost like, again, it's like drawing a big red cross on them. Whereas and they're way more than what that bans them in as, especially with modern design and stuff. And it's funny how people, but that progressive craft thing, like you referred to John riding the single fit, that was a 12-year-old surfboard or a 10-year-old surfboard, so exactly it can't be ultimately progressive. But
it's also only progressive if the concepts are getting implemented, right? If it's an idea that's actually progressing design forward. And if it's, I think in the stock contest world, it's kind of like, I think Dane may have said this in one of the Stab in the Darks before, where it's kind of like modern skateboards haven't really changed much in the in the last 10, 15 years. Like, they're kind of the stock shape of a standard professional skateboarder rides is basically the same thing, and it's kind of the same with surfboards in that vein. So I think for it to be progressive, it has to actually like shift it, like an asymmetrical design definitely would be progressive if it took that and moved design in that direction. Unfortunately, I think it's a really slow arc that we've hit kind of a stasis point in that type of a high performance shortboard design that's kind of static. And so I don't know if that's ever going to progress beyond that at least not in the next 10 or 12 years. I don't think.
I think that's something that I would, I 100% agree that I think there's maybe a little bit of a fear factor behind it of who's going to be the first person to kind of try and break that mold, and like I said earlier, maybe paddle out in a heat and put their 20 up against someone's stock high performance, quote unquote high performance shortboard, and that's almost the only way you'd probably find out. And you've got to find someone brave enough but obviously in those scenarios there's a lot of money at stake and everything else that
I mean, I guess Kelly rode a quad today. That's
the
most alternative thing of anybody else out there, right? So
yeah. And the other point on it with, because obviously I liked what Vans were trying to do with the fact that they were trying to get people on different boards, but what confused me was that they scored John's alternative wave against Crosby Colapinto's shortboard wave, and then so people were saying, oh, John came third at pipe. John won at pipe if he entered his normal board clip, but and I was just a bit, I feel like I liked their intentions, but I felt like it could have been done a different way. But
well, they'll probably tighten it. I mean, this was the first year they tried doing it that way, so I'm sure they learned a lot from that. I'm sure they'll have some feedback and fine tune it again. But it's cool. I mean, I think it's a better format, at least for that style of thing, because I think you get to see everyone's best surfing, and it's cool to show them in different spots, and you know, it's entertaining.
Yeah, it's definitely a good way to drive forward. One thing then I just wanted to, I won't take up stupid amount of your time because I genuinely could, is talking about the asim board. Talk about asim boards. I'll go ahead and say it. Like, I'm an average surfer. I know what I'm doing, but I'm an average surfer at best. When I first saw your boards, before I even ordered one, I was like, I'm not going to know the difference. And then got one, and now I noticed the difference, and my surfing's actually improved because of that board. And actually, it's weirdly helped in different ways that I didn't understand until riding one. And I just kind of wanted to ask you about how your thoughts on, for an average surfer, because that's kind of like most people, for an average intermediate surfer, do you think they actually benefit? Would you put, so say for example, when we said earlier, like, oh, if you could put someone on a board after seeing them surfing, I know it's hard to generalize it. Would you say it's beneficial for most people to actually be on an asim, or yeah,
I think that in general, asim design and concepts have they perform better and they suit average surfers better than they probably do professionals, because professionals can already take the hardest surfboard in the world to make look good, a chippy high performance thruster, and they can surf amazing on them already. So they already have the ability and the fundamentals and the skill. The real benefit of an asim is easier speed and easier turning, and they are more easily manipulated by where you're standing, because the fin placement is suited for that. You don't need to like overpower the fin placement based on where your foot is. You know, it works with you a little bit easier. And so in your board, the Townsend's a perfect example of that, because it's more of a mid-length style shape. It's a longer rail. It's a little eggier outline, not extreme, but it's definitely a fuller outline. You're right. It's not super wide, but it's more board. But how easy is that board to turn, to roll over on rail, to do almost a high performance turn on a board that normally, if it was just a single fin, you would kind of just be cruising. And so it definitely does increase the performance ceiling. And I think, like you can kind of tell when you jump on it, it's like the feeling of natural speed is just hard to beat. And so for average surfers, that's usually the thing people are struggling with, is getting a board to go, right? If they're riding a traditional high performance board, those boards are hard to go unless the waves are good. And the advantage of the asim kind of like leaps over that a little bit for people. So
yeah, that's exactly how I feel about the board. Is firstly, it's the fastest board I've ever surfed without having to do horrible pumps and jerking. But for me, it's what I found the hardest part of my surfing, and the bit that if I surfing well on a symmetrical board, front side, the hardest part is to happily come off the top and then wrapping it back round and coming out with enough speed, especially in slower English race. But where that asim's got the longer rail side, front side, but then as you're wrapping it, you've not got as much catching coming off of the backside, and because of the speed where your feet are, it just makes it. I've done turns that I kind of almost will throw away turns that I'd think, oh, this is not going to wrap back around and come, and then it's just next minute it's under my feet and I'm racing back along the wave, and I love it. And since surfing it, I have surfed symmetrical boards, and I actually think it's helped my surfing on those, because it's helped me. It's helped me notice differences, and it's helped me notice how bad I surf backside.
Well, hopefully you can try the Townsend backside, because that is one misnomer. A lot of times people think like, oh, asyms are just meant for like a point break, or they're just meant for going right or just for going left or whatever. But the theory applies to backside surfing as well. It's just a different theory. So your heel side rail line is a little shorter and curvier, and so it fits that tighter arc. So when you're turning around your body backside, turning around, like having to open your shoulders because your back's facing the wave, it just comes around a little easier, the same as a front side carve does on a front side wave. So
yeah, I can, without even going left on it yet, I almost know the feeling I'm going to get of it from where I've done like a long wrapping cutback on a right, and then coming back around to bring it back around. It definitely has that release that on other boards that's where sometimes it just gets catchy and stuff. So
I think the thing that's always surprising to people is when they jump on one, how natural it is. Though it doesn't feel like people think like, oh, okay, so I need to like take a different approach, or this is going to feel weird, and then they jump on it, it feels totally natural and easy, and they're just like, oh, this is I don't have to think about it at all. This is great.
Yeah, I completely agree. Before I had one, I was even thinking to myself, is it going to pull one way when I'm paddling? Is it?
Yeah.
And things, but it just feels almost like the less you think about it actually being asym and surfing it almost like it's symmetrical, you benefit from the bits that are shaped in certain ways to do certain things. So I love it, and I'm gonna.
Well, one part of that too. One other little thing about that is there's a reason I think I like the idea of kind of pushing, like the disasym, or the disorder we call it now, is like definitely funkier looking, right? It's got like full asymmetric nose, asymmetric tail, and the heel side rail line is kind of shifted up from the toe side. And there's like one of the reasons it kind of like pushes the extreme of like what it looks like is, to me, it's validating that things don't have to look exactly one way, pointed nose, squash tail, and they will still perform at an amazingly high level. And maybe we should explore a little bit more unnatural or just unique different shapes, because you don't know what you're going to get out of that.
Yeah, and I thought that was quite an interesting, because in the art form edit, there's a lot of kind of in the voiceover that you do talking about how the way that the ocean is different, and where the water grabs on curves on the board, and rather than having it being like straight and cut off, and having it more with curves and blending those together. I thought that was really, really interesting, and ties into when you watch it, having a couple of your boards that I do, you can see that it comes into it, because I've even got your freeform model that that's an old model, I think, when I ordered it, but it's so curvy but in the right places, and it still surfs crazy good for a board. It definitely hit a nail on the head when I could hear you talking about it at the same time as having them in my hand as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, it's true. I mean, but if you could just think about where the line your board takes when it's riding a wave, and how many different ways water is coming across every different angle and different rail, and where you're weighted, like the board is never flat on the wave. It's like one rail's engaged and then rotating and arcing around, and the water's coming underneath and through, and so the idea that things need to look exactly like a total symmetrical straight line is just a fallacy, I think. So.
Yeah, that actually, one of the stories that Christian Bradley's told me was about a board that he'd shaped for Kelly back in the day in Australia. And there was a board that got warped that was put on a rack that Kelly was not meant to grab. He came in and grabbed it without them knowing. And I think he won 3 events on it before he knew it was warped. And then they told him after like the 3rd event, that board wasn't even meant to go for you, because think it was like slightly warped or something in the blank. And so if the goat can't tell, and if it makes him surf the way he does, then it's good enough for everybody else, isn't it?
It's happened many times where I've had customers come in and say, "Oh, this board is my magic board. I want to let's replicate this one." And it's boards from me or from other people sometimes too. And you go and you just and we'll put it on the racks. It's like, all right, let's take some specs and some measurements on it. And it's like, oh, look, the toe side fin is like toed in like 1/8 of an inch, and the heel side fin is almost more like 3/16 of an inch. And the cant angle is like slightly off. And actually, like, if you're measuring from the stringer, one side is actually 1/4 inch wider than the other,
Yeah.
that happens all the time. I mean, boards are handmade, even boards that are CNC machined aren't, blanks can kind of like twist and rotate and just, they're a typical surfboard is getting touched by, and during production is getting touched by 6 or 7 different people along the way, at least. Right. And so, every little step of the way there's and sometimes those are the things that make a magic, because they're not exactly 100% perfect.
That's what I love about surfboards in general, is that they're still handcrafted, hand finished, even with the CNC process. They're still handcrafted, hand finished goods, rather than you can, obviously there are boards out there that are like injection molded, even epoxy ones and stuff, but the best boards in the world out there at the moment are still obviously the hand finished, hand shaped boards that I think the human kind of imperfections on them what make them special as well.
Mm-hmm.
which I love. So it's a good point as well that people come in and how do they react to that? That must be like quite funny.
Oh, it's funny. Yeah, customers are funny all the time. Surfers are funny in general. It's just like
they are
hilarious.
Well, there's one last question before we wrap it up then, because it's something I get asked quite a lot, and it's actually something I've asked of you before as well. Your resin tints, which are some of the best in the world in terms of how they look and obviously the finished quality, are they you, or are they someone else in the background that deserves a little bit of a shout out?
Oh, it's all a team effort, right?
Okay.
Like if I was making each board like from start to finish myself, the weight line would be way longer. So the way it works though is I've worked with my guys at the factory forever, right? And everyone has like their job, but my job is on the design side and shape side, and kind of like starting the process with the board. And so with every board I do, if it's getting a resin abstract, like in your case with your Townsend, got like a wild abstract, right? So I'll kind of almost lay that out on like paper form, where I'll either design it in Illustrator on the computer, or I'll hand kind of like color it out a little bit, where we kind of lay out. So each board that's going through the factory has its own order card with like color swatches, like logo placement, style of tint, like where the drips and abstracts should go. And then my crew takes it. And so I've got like, we glass mostly at like 3 main factories here in the US. And then we've got 1 factory in Australia. But they'll take those and then execute them. So I've got 3 or 4 different laminators, a couple guys that really specialize in some of the abstracts, a couple guys that really specialize in just clean tints and matching colors. So trying to like match the specific Pantone or the specific tone we're trying to do, which is almost impossible with resin tints. Even after 20 something years of doing it, it's still almost impossible. But that's kind of the magic of it too. You kind of have an idea, and we lay it out, and here's like, it's supposed to be this burnt orange tint, and then it comes out and it's like, oh, it's like a one-off total unique color that we were attempting to do this, but you get this comes out of it. It was kind of, which is kind of fun. So that's sick. I remember when I first went to the factory and I saw someone doing a resin tint, and I just looked down at the pot and it basically looked like black resin, and I was like, are they doing a black resin tint? And then they just put it on the board and it came out almost a really light blue, and I was like, oh, that's mad. That must be so hard to mix up. So they are pretty talented people. It'd be great. Any customer that's ever ordered a resin tint, I would love for them to take a step in the factory for a minute and see how difficult it really is to actually get a color exact. It's because just the level, how much saturation you get, how opaque the color is, how the blank takes it. if it changes when the catalyst kicks, and it, I mean, there's just a million different variables that can affect it. So
I've seen many where, but yeah, and it is one of those things that like always try to encourage people to say, like, when this is hand built, but this isn't, it's not even like a paint machine where you go in and put the Pantone in and it mixes it for you. It's someone's doing it by hand and by experience, and be nice to those people.
No, the funniest thing is it happens literally every week, where they'll order a board and they'll send me like the reference image for the board color that they're trying to match. And invariably the reference board that they've sent me was a mistake color, where we were trying to make a color, and it came out with this like different color that was super cool, obviously, that they wanted to replicate. So they're trying to replicate the kind of the mistake color. It happens all the time. And I tell them, I said, this one was intended to be like more of a midnight navy blue, and it came out more of like this deep turquoisey, like jewel tone blue. And it's like, so trying to replicate the mistake you're just chasing your tail a little bit.
That's funny. I thought as soon as you started saying that, I was like, I know where that's going. I know, and it's so almost like to replicate a board. You're copying a board that's not symmetrical when you thought it was symmetrical, and the color you want wasn't the color you wanted.
Yeah, a million variables, and then you times that by at any given point in our factory, we've got 300, 400, 500 boards going through production, and they're all different. Each one's a one-off. Each one's get a different resin tint, different construction, different glassing layup, different finish, different and so there's a million variables.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, just before we wrap up there, mate, what me and Darren usually do, and I'll catch you on the fly here, is we try and have a surfing do and a surfing don't on every episode. And I'd be interested to hear just like something that either you do or something that you've seen someone do that is a bit annoying that you'd say don't do. Yeah. So what would you say do's or don't?
Let's start with the don't. The don't, I would say, that guy who always, every time you see him, he always tells you it was good when it wasn't good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, just be honest. It's like, it's okay if it was just average, just say it was all right. The guy, no matter where he's surfing, it was always epic. And it was always, and you've been, like you're out in the lineup and you were surfing the previous day with him.
Yeah.
And it was like just okay. And you can hear him telling the person, oh dude, it was so good. You missed it. It was going off. And you're like, no, it was not. Why are you trying to make the guy feel bad that he missed it? Just tell him it was okay.
You don't know how much that relates to my work. We had some days where I've heard some people refer to our local breakers. It's been a couple of foot overhead. It's never been that big. It's never that hits home. But yeah, don't be that guy.
Yeah, don't be that guy. Let's see, what's a surfing do? I would say, always give a wave up to someone. Always give a wave in a session. It's a good do. Because I think it seems like if that shifts your mentality to be in the right place, where you almost always get rewarded with a good set wave, or you always kind of like things just kind of work out better, and it kind of forces you to be a little bit, and then you just have a better outlook, then you make a friend, they're psyched, then people are more willing to give you a wave because they know you're a guy that gives waves up. I think that's what I would try to do every session.
I like it.
Right?
I really like that, because then if everyone adopts that, then there's going to be someone in your session that gives you a wave, and then you would have given a wave, and then everyone's happy. Yeah.
And how much do you like the guy that told you to go on one that you knew he was in position for? It's like you will give that guy a wave anytime, forever. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it just goes around.
And the flip side of, if you're in the position and that guy then just burns you, never give that guy away.
No, you'll go out of your way to make sure he doesn't get one, right? I mean, it's not worth it. There's going to be another wave on. If you just let that one go, there's going to be another one behind it. So
yeah, sweet, man. Well, thanks so much for your time. It's been a pleasure to have you on. Dazza, what do you think of that? How do you break that down?
What do I think of art form, you mean? Or
Well,
what
yeah,
do I think of Matt Parker?
Let's start with art form. Let's start with the latest edit. You've seen it.
Insane. I think what's interesting, though, about this, and they say that at the start, is, or he says it, what the board would you pick if you pulled up to a break and it was on fire? Now, if you look at the whole video, it's basically filled with sensational waves. Super fun waves with Josh Kerr, and then finishing off with all-time Kira with Asher Pacey. Like, they're as waves as honestly as good as you can get. So I'm not surprised the boards went well. That's my opinion on that one.
What I wanted to ask you about, because we had a little discussion about it when John Florence released that form edit. One of the criticisms you had was the lady doing the voiceover. You would have changed her for Demi Moore, I think your words were. What did you think about it? Was Matt Parker obviously doing the
No, that sounded in place. You could, like, I didn't know it was him, but I just figured it was him because you wouldn't get someone else to go into the detail about designing boards as he did without it being him. So I think that was good.
Yeah.
And you know, honestly, I still would kick him out of bed if Demi was knocking on the door, but that's another story.
Yeah, I reckon she's probably got the same surfboard knowledge and surfboard outlook as Matt Parker might have.
Oh, she rides a thruster, mate.
Get her on an ASIM. She needs an ASIM in her life. Maybe Album should send her one. So one of the most intriguing questions, and I asked it obviously about Josh Kerr and said, if he could be on tour now, would he use his albums and would he pit a twinsman against like a high performance surfer on their team? Because Josh Kerr has no doubt, in my opinion, produced better surfing off tour on album surfboards than he has on tour. And
that's a bit cool.
And I think Jack Freestone's going down the same road as well. Jack Freestone's releasing edit now more and more. He's surfing a lot of album boards. They're getting a lot of boards to him. And I was still intrigued by it. I asked Matt, and obviously in the interview, and he can't speak for Josh or for Jack Freestone at all, but I find it really intriguing. I would love for a surfer to have the balls to come on tour and pit.
Oh, it'd be great.
I think Steffi G could do it, but
I think if you put that sort of surfing that Josh is doing in the start of that video, like, looks like a similar, it looks like a little bit better than Trestles. Let's say put Josh at 4 foot Trestles, I think he could nearly do better surfing on that board he's riding than a thruster. But yeah, he wasn't a typical surfer from the start. He wasn't necessarily a born and bred competition surfer. He was an air star from the start. He grew up on the Gold Coast where the waves are incredible, and he was just incredible. So I'm not surprised that he's got sick of riding competition thrusters and he's having a new lease of life on these boards.
Yeah, didn't he go air guy, big wave guy, then tour guy?
No. It was air guy, tour guy, part-time big wave guy.
Yeah.
Twin guy.
Now he flies on them. And I just think that would be super like intriguing. And it goes to the point again that was made in the chat with Matt about what he would put an everyday surfer on, and whether for an everyday surfer, if a thruster is the right way, we've had a podcast where we spoke about being on mid lengths, and that's obviously not everybody's cup of tea. But again, even experimenting with like the Twinsman, I've never heard a bad word said about it. I know I've surfed one. I know quite a few people that have surfed one in reviews and stuff like that. Never heard a bad word said about it, and I think I see people surf it like a thruster but better. And I just find it intriguing for everyday surfers as well as for pros, whether they should be looking at broadening their horizons.
Well, they already are. Like one of my best friends down here, Rob Vaughan, who's a really good shape. He's English, huh?
Yeah.
He's got an Australian passport. He's actually in Australia at the moment doing an endless summer.
He's got the little spinny top logo.
Yes. Yeah, he's got a model called the Twin Pin, which is like he doesn't have the same marketing or a business plan as Matt, but he can't make enough of them. And he's been making them. He's actually been big in twins for like 15 years. Huh? And this Twin Pin is like a mid-length shape. It's really similar to what Asher's riding at the end of that film, and it's a pintail with a twin. I mean, they've all got them. Like Channel jumped on the thing and everything. Rob's been making these for years, and basically what you can see with people that want to be on a board that they're catching more waves, like 6'8", for example, and they go onto a twin pin, and all of a sudden they're on a mid length, but they're on something that's super loose. It's got the drive because it's got a long rail line. It's got the twin, so it doesn't have the center fin there slowing it down. So off the top, which is where like 99% of people, myself included, I hate frontside re-entries unless the waves kind of push them back at you, because you just kind of get lost up there. But if you've got a twin, you get up there and you've got way more release.
Yeah, 100%. The board, again, we spoke about the board that Ash is on. That's actually a modified asim. It's a Townsend, which I've got, which you're dying to use. That's generally an asim that they put a roundtail on for him, and but it is that. And I mean, how good's Asher Pacey surfing as well?
It's funny that maybe it's the last wave where he spends a lot of that wave looking for the barrel. This is Kira, where generally you can take off and the barrel will find you, but he spends the first half of the wave looking for the barrel, where he probably should have been gunning it, because then all of a sudden he was deep in a 50-meter freight train. And I don't know, I don't reckon there's many people apart from Kelly or Mick that would get through that section on a thruster. He got through it with his eyes closed. Things.
Yeah.
Speed, unbridled speed.
And he just came out and done like a giant highline floater as well. And it's just stylish as well. This is something I didn't ask Matt, but it's something I always wonder is how people get people to ride their boards, how Asher Pacey was chosen to ride album boards. And I wonder,
Asher probably saw one of his boards, right? Liked it, went in and saw him. Matt would have done him maybe a deal on board one, and then he sees how much profile he's got, and he will given him the boards. Like, that's what I said to a guy the other day who's doing an article on how come surfboards cost that much. I don't think Jack Freestone, I don't think Matt rang Jack Freestone up and said, I'll give you 10 grand more than what Paizel's giving you. Like, there's no way that happened. I reckon Paizel said to him, look, you're going to pay for your boards more now, or something like that.
Yeah. Well,
it's just what I think.
Well, Matt says that at the end of last year's tour, Jack had picked up a Twinsman in Australia and he couldn't get off of it. So then I think Jack then contacted him for some boards, probably, like you say, probably paid trade or less than trade for whatever. And he probably then just loved them and said, and then I reckon Paizel probably maybe got a bit funny, maybe, or like you say, maybe changed the deal, because no doubt.
Because he was no longer on tour and he's got John and he's already got to give away so many 1,000 free boards that he doesn't need another ex-CT guy that gets 50 boards who's not actually promoting what he's selling.
Yeah, so as an insight actually to people who listen who don't have the kind of exposure that say people like us on the inside do, when you was the manager of Euroglass, and obviously you don't have to go into specifics, but Leo was surfing for Chris, or he still does, but surfs Christian Bradley's. How many boards roughly do you think, like would you say a year, someone like a CT surfer, so say Leo or Kalohe or whatever, roughly do you reckon they're going through?
Like 50 to 100. 50 low balling on guys that are a little bit more mature and actually understand what they're riding, and like 100 high balling the guys that are being princesses and want to change something all the time, or they're struggling with the results, so they just keep pushing for something different.
Yeah, that's it. And when you think about that, if you think low ball wise, that's one shaper making one board a week for one guy every single week of the year.
Yeah. Well, they don't do it like that. They'll get five at a time.
Obviously not.
So they get five, and then they'll hold on to one, and then the other four, they say, I don't like that so much, so make me another five of that one. But that's kind of completely different from what you're looking at with Matt Parker, because when you're looking at album boards or something like that, what are you seeing all the time? Resin tints, quality pieces of art.
Yeah.
So the person's not so much buying into a marketing program, which is Leo or Kanoa Igarashi or even Kelly riding a board in a comp. They're buying into a product that looks really good and that is aesthetically pleasing to them.
And I think
without someone attached to it.
And I think it's more relatable as well. Like when you see the boards that album sale boards, like you say, half as much as on how good they are to surf, is on how good they look. And I reckon you get more people even replicating an album resin tint, like a resin swirl or something abstract, on a different board. So they go to a surf shop or board shop or whatever and go, right, I want a custom Lost board, but I want this resin tint, and send in a picture of an album board. Then you don't see anyone going, oh, I want the same spray as Felipe, or I want
they do, but not to the same.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Not to the same extent.
It's like you say, I completely agree. It's a different ballpark of how you compare the boards, but it's definitely something that's really, really intriguing, is that kind of artwork as well as a tool to go and surf.
I think strange is, I mean, Josh Kerr, he's just an incredible surfer. I think what he's riding is harder. He came in with probably one of those boards, huh? He came into Euroglass, I think it was maybe in his last year, or he was there with his daughter, or I can't remember. And he came in and showed a twin to Christian to get him to make one, I think, while he was there, to see if he could make him one while he was there. Or he was just like, Christian asked him what it looked like, because I'd showed him the video. This must have been 3 years ago. I saw his video come out like 3 years ago. And maybe it was a board test that he did down in Mexico. I'm struggling. It'll come to my mind. But he did a board test down in Mexico for someone. And it's a small board. It was so, yeah. I mean, he's riding it in good waves. He's a top whatever surfer. I think he suits Matt better, just because he's showing people what a top of the top end can do on these alternative craft, as opposed to people being just, oh yeah, that's a alternative craft, but it's going to go like shit. And even if I'm never going to surf like Josh, at least I could see that it could go like that.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you flip that over to the other rider that he's got, obviously Asher Pacey, this is the type of thing where it's quite funny. Is Asher's a big guy,
big hippie looking dude,
and he surfs like 5.2s, 5.3s, and sometimes smaller. And that's where you just got. I mean, that's why everyday punter. I mean, me and you, I'm just under 6'3", and you're pretty much the same height. We weigh like 75 kilos. So Asher Pacey probably weighs a bit more than us, and probably is close to the height.
More than me for sure.
Yeah, there's no way me and you should go near a 5'2". Like, no matter what we're doing.
I tried back in the day, because we were making a whole bunch of different fun ones. Like Bradley had a couple of boards like the new Barcelona, which had heaps of volume. But as soon as I got to a 5.6, I really couldn't get it to go unless the waves were a bit bigger, and then it kind of was the opposite of what I was wanting it to use it for.
I once surfed a 5'5" catch surf foamy. It's the Lost Round Nose Fish version, and it's the first time ever popping up that I've missed the nose of a board, because it felt that short under me being 6'3". It just going that short just feels insane. Like, can't comprehend it. But
you don't see him in a wetsuit a lot, huh? Asher Pacey. He's in board shorts and a wet shirt. It's 5'2", but it's probably got a ton of volume. And he's on small to medium punchy little right-handers. So for those sort of boards, they're perfect.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. It's the Sunstone model.
Those waves, that is.
It's the Sunstone model that he rides, and I think even at 5'2", it's still 29 litres. It's not something stupid, but at the
same volume as Jackson Baker's 6'8".
Yeah, almost. Which is so crazy. Yeah, like you say, you got to remember that he is Asher Pacey. He is surfing in boardies and surfs probably every single day, and is very good. Also, to that point, is Matt says in art form in the clip, if you listen to it, he says about where Asher stands in a very unique style and a very unique place on boards that not a lot of people do. So that's why for him, he can.
And he's got his feet close together. He grew up surfing right-hand points, didn't he? Huh?
Yeah. I mean,
so even though you see him really going good on lefts in in that video as well. And I had a good look. He kind of squirrels out a little bit on a couple of his backside turns, which is what a twin will do. It'll squirrel on you because if you lean too much on it, you don't have any controlling steering keel in the middle. But he sort of goes light off the bottom and heavy off the top.
Especially when you go backside 20 and you've got quite a close, like your feet closed together, like a closed off stance, rather than you see some people backside and it doesn't squirrel too much, but then they've got a bigger board as well, which is funny.
Rob Vaughan kept telling me, look, when you go into a turn, just don't push it. Just go slower into it, where you got all the speed, you come into a frontside turn. Because I've grown up on thrusters and now I really like quads, you just want to push it as hard as you can.
Yeah.
If you do that on a twin, you just kind of can like slide out a bit, even though you see Josh Kerr doing it. But I'm looking at Josh Kerr's boards and they look real. His twins, where he's just going Mach 10 through a turn, they look quite pulled in.
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing as well. It's a massively good point, because if you watch Jack Freestone's first clips on album boards, he doesn't actually look like, you can almost tell that he doesn't feel 100% confident what the board's going to do out of the turn. And then he's been surfing them a lot, and no doubt he's surfed a lot of 20s. I remember him having the Alex Cruz Shapes or Die, the Axide board, and surfing it sick and making me want one. But you can see that every clip that he's posted now is getting more and more and more dialed in on these album boards, and I think he could be a very, very, very successful free surfer.
Oh, well, you know,
like not just
guys. Not just famous
that,
wife. He's got an incredible style. He won World Juniors twice. He's an air fiend. He's got everything going for him in that, which he didn't have on the tour, because you got to put it into 30 minutes as opposed to being able to express yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's where one of my favourite parts of any surf film is Jack Freestone's part in Cluster, and I just want to see him start replicating. And he's just dropped a clip today or yesterday on an album board where he does this nose pick like air on this model. Apparently it's a model he's working on and designing, and it's like Cluster-esque. It's fucked up, and I loved it.
Well, good on you, Jack.
Yeah, Jack, come on, Jack, Josh and Asher, do a 5-way episode.
Maybe he's got to get a goofy footer. What is he, racist?
No, just regular
Matt,
way.
are you listening to this, Matt? I'm not a goofy footer, but where's your goofy footers? Get Oki on. See if Oki can blow the back out of a couple on a 20.
Nah, Daz, his next two riders need to be me and you. you got to bring your...
I'll send him my CV.
Yeah, we got to bring send him some of your waves from this week. That'll get him psyched.
I tell you, who'd probably go pretty good. It would be Ruben Ash.
Yeah. I've seen some really cool clips that he done for Excel, the wetties that were really good.
Let's see if we can put Ruben and Alwyn together for an end of year clip.
Yeah, I would like to see Chipper Wilson on some of them. Is he a goofy foot? I think he might be.
Yes, he's a goofy foot.
Because he's like, he rides just thrusters, and I would love to see him come on to some 20s and some ace.
I think he rode. That could have been a new word for our podcast. I think he rode a couple of different sort of boards in that last Stab Highway project. Yeah,
most of them. He was mostly doing chop hops on boogie boards, wasn't he?
Well, before we let things go to the hack, Matt, let's call it a day.
Let's do our do's and don'ts.
I've got a good do's and don'ts.
Right, you lead us in.
Do lend your mates surfboards, which is good, because Christian Bradley's just been lending me a couple of boards over the last couple of weeks, and even before that, Mark Phipps lent me a board, and it just gives you a chance to see if you can find a new magic carpet. And don'ts is one that I woke up in the middle of last night thinking about is I lent this 610 Spider pintail to this guy like 15 years ago when I just first started at Euroglass. It was the marketing director of Quicksilver's, and his mate came in and they were going to Morocco, and the guy didn't have a step up, and I had one there, and Bradley was going, yeah, just lend it to him, man, don't worry, it's Spurter, he's the marketing director. Yeah, no worries. And I lent it to him, and I never saw it again, ever. It ended up back in Australia, and a year or two later, I got this friend of mine who was then living in Victoria to go, and he went and picked up the board, but I don't know where it is. I never saw it again. So don't lend it to people, boards to people that aren't your mates.
Right, yeah. So lend them to trustworthy people and not people that you don't really know.
Yes.
I like it. It does help when you're saying lend your boards to mates, and the two mates you've got lending you boards are two world-class shapers. But I back it because I borrow a lot of boards from the board collecting director that I have at Board Shop.
But surely we've got listeners out there that have got mates that are board sluts, and you just hang with them, buy them a hamburger, invite them around. If you've got a pool, invite them around to the pool. Even kids at school, if you invite the kid to the pool, he gets all the mates.
Yeah, even if you don't, even if you've only got, like I used to do this all the time, mid session, swap your mate, just have a go.
As long as he's on something decent.
Yeah, well, even if he's not, like if you're on something decent, let him catch like one or two waves and then give his shit house board back, and then he'll hate the rest of the session. And it's even
we won't bash this one to death. You give us yours, mate.
So my do's and my don't. So it's a do and a don't in one. Do de-wax your board once a year, at least, minimum. You should do it more, but minimum. Don't let your wax last all year, because I went to surf a board that I hadn't de-waxed for like a year and a half the other day, and it was
you fell inside it.
It was just terrible.
And there's another kilo on your board.
Yeah, I felt ashamed.
You should actually clean both sides of your boards at least once a year. When you de-wax it, the other side you get out and you buff it up too. You get your little petrol tin for your lawnmower or whatever, or your missus's nail polishing remover, or a bottle of metho, something like that you're saving for a rainy day if you've got a bit thirsty, and get it all off.
Yeah. So my do's and don'ts are all in one. Basically, look after your wax job, and your wax job will look after you.
It was kind of like a unique do and don't.
It's just I like to learn.
We won't hold it against you, man.
I like people to learn from my mistakes, and I last week took two right-handed mitts to go and surf, and then this week I went to surf a board and was ashamed of myself at the wax job that was on there. So,
well, man, it's the difference between having something that looks good and looks shitty as well. And if it looks good, it's going to make you feel a bit better than if it looks shitty.
Yeah, this is one of those wax jobs where you pulled it out of the bag and you ran your hand over it, and it was like rock solid and shiny. It was bad, but there we go. Another special guest on the Insiders podcast, and I hope everyone loved it as much as I did. I was absolutely frothing. I don't think I slept that night. Kelly had one pipe. I just spoken to Matt Parker of Album Surfboards. I've got to thank Matt for his time.
Thanks, Matt.
Huge honour for me. I hope everyone else enjoys it as much as I did. And we'll be back next week with another poddy. Maybe another special guest. Who knows? Maybe that's how we roll from now on.
Yeah, I've got a couple of special guests up my sleeve, Matt. Let's just keep them secret.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.